you hear me? Okay, thank you so much, Sally, for speaking about the Kakuma project, which is so important for us at FiLiA. My name is Raquel Rosario Sánchez, and I am the spokeswoman for FiLiA. I am a frontline worker, a researcher, a campaigner, and a writer from the Dominican Republic. So today we are all here for the FiLiA's Sisterhood Is Powerful panel. As you can see, we have a big table full of wonderful women because, you know, we're just like you. We get excited to get so many magnificent women's rights campaigners from all over the world that we just want to give you a taste of the work that they do, the challenges that they're facing, the lessons that they're learning. So this panel is an opportunity for the audience here at FiLiA to hear from those women directly, women from all over the world who have joined us at FiLiA. So please give it up for our wonderful panel. You know, when I was setting up for the panel, I thought that I was doing a panel with women talking, but now it has transformed into something a little bit different. There are some women who want to do some new things. Before we begin, can I just please ask, one of our panelists has asked that people please don't take any pictures, don't record any videos, and that's the lovely Surah Backman from Afghanistan. So please respect her privacy. And okay. Well, thank you so much. So before this is the start of the panel. We're going to start with Marie-Claire Faray from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and her and some of her sisters want to perform a song for us.
Hello, everyone. Greeting from our sisters from Africa, particularly from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Some could not attend due to unfair, discriminatory visa procedure, which are restrictive, that mean that their voices could only be amplified by diaspora women, such as ourselves, and we are sending this greeting to you. Solidarity with women in the world. Solidarity with women in the world. Solidarity with women in the world. Ba mama musilale, musilale, ba mama musilale. Ma mama pambayo, ma pambayo, ma pambayo. Ma mama pambayo, ma pambayo, ma pambayo. Ba mama musilale, musilale, ba mama musilale. Mayo ma pambayo, ma pambayo, ma pambayo. Mayo ma pambayo, ma pambayo, ba mama musimame, musimame, ba mama musimame. Mayo ma pambayo, ma pambayo, ma pambayo. Mayo ma pambayo, ba pambayo, ma pam. Ba mama musimame, musimame, ba mama musimame. Mayo ma pambayo, ma pambayo, ma. We are powerful. We are resisting. We are empowered like Wangari Maathai. We are resisting like Winnie Mandela. We are resisting like Kim Pavita. We are here. We are resisting oppression. We are resisting patriarchy. We are together. And as you can see in these pictures here, women are standing. These are from Africa, from Congo. They are standing. When I say in Swahili, Bamama Musimame, that means stand up. Don't sleep, because the oppression is still there. Yeah.
Wow, okay. How could I possibly follow that? How could I? Oh, what a moment. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Marie-Claire. Okay, so I just want to start by asking all our panelists to please introduce themselves very briefly, just their name, what they do, and then their country, and then we can begin the questions.
My name is Melissa Farley. I am working for the abolition of prostitution, among other things, and I'm from the U.S.
Hi, I'm Sohier Elneil. I'm a women's rights activist and health care activist based in the UK, but originally from Sudan.
Jambo, jambo, jambo. My name is Dr. Salome Mbugua. I'm from Dublin, Ireland. I work with a network of migrant women living in Ireland, mainly working with women coming from all over the world, living in Ireland now.
Hello, my name is Marianne Paredes. I come from Canada. I was born and raised in Colombia.
Hi everyone, I'm Vandana and I'm an anti-caste activist and I work in UK as well as India for the issues on Dalit women. Thank you.
I'm Marianne Hester. I'm based in the UK, though I'm originally from Denmark, and I'm an academic and activist.
Hello, I'm Marie-Claire Faray. I'm representing women from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I am a scientist, and I represent Common Cause UK, which is a platform of Francophone African women and Congolese women, and also the acronym Institute for Disarmament, Diplomacy in Disarmament. Thank you.
Okay, so let's begin our questions. What a wonderful panel. How am I going to manage? So let's begin with Melissa Farley. Melissa, you're a clinical psychologist, a researcher, and a radical feminist, anti-prostitution and anti-pornography campaigner. And you are a heroine of mine. I do have to say this, the other day she was standing, so I also work on prostitution. My focus is on men who pay for sex. And we were in the lobby. I had never met Melissa, but I have used her work for all of my studies. And she was standing in the lobby talking to someone else, and I was like standing here, just like looking at her like, and then it took me like a minute or so and be like, Raquel, you're staring at her, like stop, you need to go. Melissa, okay, so you're the founder and director of the Prostitution Research and Education Organization in the US. Could you tell us a little bit about your work to abolish prostitution in the United States?
Yes, but first let me say that you have been an inspiration of mine for a number of years, Raquel, Rosario. And I'm not kidding. And my age, 81, I need to know there are women like you in the world. It's incredibly important. Thank you for your work. Before I go into our 25-year abolitionist organization that has a website with lots and lots of free resources, reports, etc., I want to tell you a personal little itsy-bitsy story, if that's okay. I would recommend that all of us read carefully The Grumpy Woman's Guide to Feminism that I just saw on the book stand a couple hours ago. I went back to take a photo of it, and it had sold out. There were no more copies left. Why am I mentioning that? Because a dear friend of mine had a brutal argument with somebody she dearly loves in our movement, and I just had a very loud discussion with my colleague that we're working together to put on a conference on pornography production harms in a few days. We have to know how to resolve conflict. We have to stay in this for the long run. We don't want to stomp out on our friends and allies even when we're mad at them. And in the long run, I can't tell you how important that is to be able to hang in there. All political movements have dissension, discussion, and arguments. And in my country, in the civil rights movement, sometimes they killed each other. Political allies actually fought and killed each other, and we can't afford that kind of level of fighting. So my point is, hang in there, figure out how to resolve fights, arguments, conflicts, and work with people that can help resolve that.
I will ask you again about the prostitution issue as a follow-up. Yeah, no, it's fine, it's fine. Well, I wonder now if we could go to Professor Marianne Hester. So, Marianne Hester, you are the author of Lewd Women and Wicked Wishes, which is a panel that we're hosting tomorrow. And it's about male domination. Could you tell us a little bit about where did your inspiration come from and what did you find when you were researching?
Okay, so...
in a couple of minutes.
In a couple of minutes, oh my God. Well, I was really involved in the activism in Leeds in the early 1980s. You know, Sandra McNeil is here as well, and the Women Against Violence Against Women organisation. We were doing a lot of stuff and on the streets and everything because we had Peter Sutcliffe, so-called Yorkshire Ripper, kind of creating havoc at the time, and we were really creating a big movement against violence against women. And I was a student then, just starting out on my PhD, and I was getting, you know, I really wanted to do something around violence against women, reading Andrea Dworkin, and also she came to the area as well, and all the amazing feminist writing around that time. And I was going to do some work comparing countries, but Margaret Thatcher came in just at the time when I started my PhD, so I lost my PhD funding because she took away the student funding at that time, one of the first things she did. So I thought, okay, I'll compare history instead. And then I wasn't a historian, but you know, like Selina Scott said yesterday, anyone can do history. So I decided I would do it. So, and so I thought, well, violence against women, let's look in the past. And I went further and further back, and I found these amazing writings, which didn't become part of my PhD. But you know, I was reading the Beguines, these, you know, the women who entered women-only religious orders in order to get away from men. Clearly, you know, they were, and then later on, those convents got closed down, and those women really had a lot of problems because there was nowhere for them to go. But also, Christine de Pizan's City of the Ladies, who knows that one? Amazing book, you must read it. She wrote that in the 13th century, something like that. It's a very old book. But it was about how women resist male violence. And they do it by building this City of Ladies brick by brick. And she tells the story of these amazing women, which is like, for each brick she puts in the wall, she talks about these amazing women. And I always remember one bit of incredible resistance that the women, there was the Lombardies, you know, there were these male marauders who came, the army, like we of course know now. I mean, you know, women are always being raped as part of war by men, and also at that time. And she talks about the Lombardies who were marauding and warring, and the women decided they would resist by putting putrid chicken on their breasts, so that these Lombardies did not want to go near them and did not want to rape them because they stank so much, as she said. And I thought, that is brilliant. And I've used it in teaching ever since, because I think, what a brilliant bit of resistance.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Salome Mbugua, you are the head of operations and strategy at Akidwa. You're a researcher in women's rights campaigning with over 20 years of experience in underrepresented groups in Africa, Europe, and international. Your focus is, however, on the integration of women into peace-building conflicts. Sorry, into peace building. I want to get back to that, but before we begin, I think you have a poem to share with us?
Yeah, thank you. Yesterday, actually, when I introduced myself, I said I'm an apologetic feminist, because it's very important that we remain stubborn, you know, as women, so as we can achieve equality for women, because we are still very far away from achieving that. But very quickly, you know, I actually use research to be able to bring the voices of the women, and especially women who are quite often, you know, left out, you know, who are excluded from the society. So I've done research mainly on women seeking international protection, for example, in Ireland, trying to bring issues that are affecting them, because quite often they're exploited, you know, sexually, economically, you know, in all sense. And so I want to read this poem which covers what I do and what we do with my organization, Akidwa. They say I am everywhere. Yes, trying to save the world. Like hummingbird, I give all I can. My home is where my heart is. Home, sweet home. I speak the language of humanity. One race, the human race. I am the woman of the world. With no hard feelings, I intervene in situations, even complicated ones. I challenge inequalities. In their words, women should be silent, not heard or seen. I refuse to keep quiet. I am the woman of the world. They identify me as a foreigner, non-national, migrant, black woman. You have good English. In silence, they label me. I am the woman of the world. I refuse to be silenced. Yes, I will speak out, shout, scream, doing the best I can, living each day at a time to make our world a better place. I am a woman of the world. You can find my poems, you know, and I have some of them here.
I can't believe my panel is turning out so perfect. I'm so excited. That was so moving. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so I wonder if we could go now to Maria Paredes, who I have right next to me. Maria, you are a caseworker and a community organizer for LECLES, which is an organization that campaigns against sexual exploitation. And you know, I saw Maria at the lobby of this little hostel where we're all staying, and she said to me, like, oh, well, it's good to see another Latina here. And then I said to myself, like, yes, it's great. I think it's great to have another Latina on the panel. But then when I was researching you, I found out that you're also a frontline worker, and I'm a frontline worker, so I'm just like, oh my God, I just found another bestie. I just found another best friend. So Maria, tell us a little bit about your work, particularly the work that you do to raise awareness and to abolish the horrible plight of missing and murdered women.
Thank you. So I'll begin by talking a little bit about la CLE. So it's la Concertación de Lucha contra la Explotación Sexual. In English is the Concerted Action Against Sexual Exploitation. We are based in Montreal. We are a francophone organization. We're created to counter the myths and stereotypes of the sex industry and offer a critical analysis regarding the expansion of the prostitution and trafficking industry for the purpose of sexual exploitation. So one of our objectives is to offer alternative options to women throughout our frontline works and to advocate for an implementation and maintain the equality model. Currently, one of our fights is to create exiting programs and advocate to have exiting programs in our province in Quebec, but also in the rest of Canada. So my work with Indigenous women is a personal work as well. I come from Colombia, which I don't know if a lot of you know the context of this country, but I was born in the 90s. And during the 90s, there was a lot of political unrest. There was bombings, killings, missing and murdered Indigenous women. And there was a lot of people being killed. And as well as resource extraction happening in the Amazons and the jungle. And as a little girl, I was consumed by all of this news. The news was always in front of me. I also grew up around a lot of women, about four aunts, and there was only one man in my life. It was my stepfather. My father was killed when I was 5 years old. So violence was very much a part of my life and influenced the way that I think about life right now. At the same time, I didn't pinpoint what were the solutions to all the violence that I was seeing. It was only when I immigrated later at age 16 to Canada that I decided to work with women. I Googled how to work with women in prostitution. I think deep in my mind, I knew that there was something not okay with the sex industry. Also coming from Colombia, we know that women are trafficked and there's a lot of narco-sex tourism. So having that in mind, I knew that I wanted to work with women in the sex industry. So once I was in Vancouver, I decided to join a group of women and who were abolitionists, and it was there where I knew that the personal is political. I knew that all men are potential rapists, and I also realized that no woman is free until all women are free. I think
I can come back to you.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for sharing all of that. I'm very sorry to hear about your dad. I wonder if we could go now to Sohier Elneil. Sohier, you are a urogynecologist and a uroneurologist, and you work with women with pelvic floor, bladder, and bowel injuries. You particularly work with women who suffer vesico-vaginal fistulas and female genital mutilation in the Global South. Exactly, yes. Wow. I was wondering, as I was learning about reading your biography, I wonder what came first. You know, the interest in medicine or the interest in women's rights and the very specifically female issues that male violence can have on women's bodies. And then you sort of decided, well, I could be a doctor.
Thank you very much. I come from Sudan, and in Sudan, I come from a tribe called the Jali tribe. The Jali tribe are a warrior tribe, and many of you who might have heard about the war in Sudan and the movement in 2019 would have heard of the Kandaka women. The Kandaka women are a force for good, and they were warrior women, and that's my origin, so that's where I started. I then had, and anyone who knows me knows I'm a bit like that, so I don't keep quiet. And then I had parents who were incredible parents, and had a father who ended up being the Deputy Director General of the World Health Organization, and his belief was education, 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 and then use everything you've learned for good. Now, he was a medic, so of course it was expected I'd go into medicine, but I did say I was a Kandaka warrior, and I decided I wanted to do science instead. Finished science, and he came back and said, I still think you should do medicine, which I did do. And then when I finished medicine, my interest was in surgery. I was a surgeon at heart, and that was where I wanted to go. But he was the one, and I did say it earlier this morning, he was probably my first feminist that I came across, because he said to me, you need to do something for women. The only way you can do that is to do obstetrics and gynecology and understand women from the inside out, because then you can help them. So it's all part of a journey. And I remember having finished medicine, the first place I really went to work, because I trained in Africa, was at the Addis Ababa Fistula Hospital, so looking after women with traumatic childbirth injuries. And when you see that end stage dysfunction, you cannot do anything but think about how can you stop this happening. And that's where it started. So basically, it was a sort of a mixture, having grown up all over Africa, watched the misery that women would be put through. Women also had a good time in other ways, because a lot of the respect in certain components of our societies are present, but particularly with childbirth, it was not uncommon to hear somebody died in childbirth, and people to say, well, it's fate. It was meant to be. It's not really meant to be. You can stop that. So that's where it really came from. And then I started looking about all the morbidity that women suffered. They didn't just die, because for every woman who died, another 20 would end up with crippling morbidity, problems with real serious dysfunction that impacted on their life, lost them their livelihoods and their husbands. and their children, and their families, and their society, and their culture. They could be ousted. So that's where I started. And if you need to understand the women, you need to start to understand their circumstance and the culture, and that's where FGM came in. And then when I came back to the UK, it was also understanding what affected women here. So many of you will know that women's health in the UK is also affected in a lot of ways, particularly in obstetrics and gynecology. So the fight never stopped, it kept on going, and my voice in this arena was important. It was important to speak up on behalf of women, but doing it by listening to women. I needed to listen to women, and the women guided me. So that's where we started, from Kandaka to women.
Perfect. It is truly remarkable work and much needed, so thank you. Vandana Aparanti, now we're going to hear from you. You are an anti-caste campaigner and a global expert in the field of women oppressed by the caste system. You are the co-founder and chair of the Stop Gender-Based Caste Oppression, and which is one of the only organizations raising awareness about caste discrimination in India and in the UK. Could you tell us a little bit about how you got involved into caste discrimination, particularly with a focus on women? And can you tell us about the current state of play of caste discrimination, both in India but also in the UK?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Quite a long question. I got in. Yeah, I think so. I got involved with the caste issue because I myself am born untouchable, so-called untouchable, from the eyes of the Indians or the South Asians. But then the caste system does exist in India, though we have the legislation for it, but people do not, follow it because they are very privileged. They don't look at their privileges, and they are not aware that they are privileged and they shouldn't be, following it. And they proudly say, that I belong to this caste, I belong to that caste. And this is not only in Hinduism, it's also in Islam. Because I've heard women who are Muslims saying that we are the direct descendants of the Prophet, and we are the Sayyadnas or the Sayyads, so which is for the higher caste. And the Hindus are blatantly saying, I'm Brahmin, I'm this, I'm that. And that is how India is depicted as a vegetarian country, but it's not. 70% of Indians eat non-vegetarian food. So it's a myth which is spread. And when I came to the UK, what I realized was in UK also there is casteism which is followed. And what all efforts have been done to get over it, or legislation or whatever, in the UK I'm talking about. So I'm working on it, and I have a group of people who are working on it very hard. I think when you ask me next, I'll explain to you what we are doing here.
Absolutely, yes, I'll follow up. I want to hear from Marie-Claire Faray. You're a women's rights campaigner from the Democratic Republic of Congo. You mentioned to me that you're deeply concerned about the resistance to international solidarity and how this maintains male violence against women and femicide in many countries in Africa. What did you mean by that?
Well, Congolese women have been living under hostile, toxic environment for over 60 years. And there is an international solidarity at the UN Security Council. And as you know, the UN Security Council, Africa is not part of the permanent member of the Security Council. Security Council is run by those who are financing wars, militarization all over the world. And as you can see, those who are actually financing the war in Ukraine, Russia, NATO, all of them, they are the ones who are exploiting the Democratic Republic of Congo. There is an international solidarity from those at the Security Council to not implement the Women, Peace and Security agenda. The Women, Peace and Security agenda, there are 10 resolutions and no implementation. So we, Congolese women, have stood up to contextualize the women, peace and security agenda to fit the need of Congolese women. And we have established a center for women, peace and security in the Congo. We call it the DRC Congo Women, Peace and Security Center. And we're going to have a workshop on tomorrow to talk about how we are implementing it ourselves. We are with our own funding, because today, as feminists, as you know, feminist today has been hijacked. The word feminist has been hijacked, where the oppression and patriarchy has been removed for us. Because when you say you are a feminist in places in Africa, it says it's like you are bringing in Western ideology. Feminist is not a Western ideology. It's an ideology to liberate women from oppression. It's not an ideology of white women. It's an ideology of all women, regardless of your race. And sexism and racism are the faces of the same coin. If we don't fight racism, if we don't fight classism, if we don't fight sexism and racism, we are not going to win this war, because it is a war on us. And there's an international solidarity about it. And now that there is this new trend to come and actually ask us to define ourselves, what it means to be a woman, we are being questioned. We are being questioned. And aid to women in Africa, and particularly in Congo, is being conditioned. To many women, they're asking them to increase, to say that they're supporting non-binary. Yes, non-binary people. So I think I'm going to talk about it, but I'm really concentrating on women, peace and security in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie-Claire. I want to follow up on that women, peace and security agenda, and I do want to follow up also on the gender identity issue in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Before we do that, Salome Mbugua, I wonder if we could talk about peacekeeping and peace operations. So, you know, the world right now is on edge. We know this. We know what is happening as we speak in Palestine and what is happening in Israel. And we also know what's happening to the women in Haiti who are about to face an invasion too. So tell us about your work integrating women into peacemaking situations, and how can we increase the seats at the table for women?
Thank you very much for that question. I did a whole research on this area, and it was based on Democratic Republic of Congo in Goma, how still women are missing on the table. And sometimes actually, you know, to show that, you know, we have a representation of women who do not understand, you know, what is happening on the ground, you know, are the ones who are taken to talk on behalf of those women who are mainly affected by conflict. As Marie said, actually, you know, the peace and security agenda itself, even the resolution 1325, we all have national action plan. It has a very high language, a language that is not of the grassroots woman. When I talk about the grassroots woman, I talk about woman in Goma who is actually living in threat, who is living in fear every day, who her voice is not heard even when they go to the African Union. She's not on that table. She's just actually, you know, sitting just like all of us are sitting here, some of us at the very back, and not even having that even small voice to say of what is happening. And just to say that, you know, as we even continue to talk about these issues, because, you know, some of the meetings happen at the national level in these countries, that even these women are not involved. We still don't talk about what is exactly happening, what is happening on the ground, because that's what we need to talk about. Because if we do not talk about it at that level of where it's happening, that we talk of policies and things that are of very, very high level, which are not actually like, they don't trickle down to address the whole issue. We are not actually addressing anything. And yet, you know, the bodies of women are still continuing to be, you know, violated, you know, rape being used as a weapon of war. Women actually being actually abducted and being made wives, still it's happening even now as we speak, and we are not talking about those issues. And it's mainly because women are not brought on the table. We still have very few women, and when we talk about women, we also need to talk about who are these women. Are they women who have the real experience and understanding, and that they sympathize and empathize with the women on the ground? The issues of, patriarchy, because all these countries and where the conflict and war is happening, look at how they treat women. So we are talking about addressing the patriarchy. We are talking about addressing the male hegemony. In Congo, even when I was actually talking to the women, they were bitter that even the children that they are giving birth to, the young boy who are the rebels, that are used to go and fight and, cause all these problems. Some of them are very, very young boys, raping a woman of 80 years, We need to come into reality with exactly what is happening and addressing that male hegemony, male, behavior of like feeling they have overpower and power over women. And it's us women who should speak out and talk about it. And actually, trying to bring these women who can speak. I know Marie knows some women in Congo who can speak very well in that table. But can she be allowed to bring those women along? Can she be allowed to promote those women or to bring them up? I think we need to speak out. We need to scream and shout to bring more women on the table. We also need to question the United Nations, especially the Peace and Security Office, in United Nations, because they're doing it all wrong. And it's happening wrong. The wars are continuing. The war in Congo has been there for years and years, and now it's still continuing as we speak. Now it's in Afghanistan, it's in Iran, we are hearing it, in Israel, in Palestine, and who suffers most? It's the women and the girls. But they are not that table that can make meaningful decision or add value to what should be done. So we really need to talk more on how we bring more women, because as of now, all the nations are actually just going into what they can benefit in each countries, but in these countries, but not how they can support women, bodies not to be violated or to be abused and attacked. So we are still not talking about the major issues and the issues that are happening on the ground.
Absolutely. Yes, and I will try to follow up with one of the panelists so we can continue talking about peacekeeping. Melissa Farley, can we have a brief conversation about prostitution? I mean, as FiLiA, we could not be more explicit that we're an abolitionist organization. We are opposed to prostitution, which we consider to be a form of male violence against women. So I want to hear, hold on. So you have a career of over 30 years, maybe more, researching the sex industry, and I want to know, do you see hope in the state of the world in terms of prostitution? Do you see that we're making some headway, or what do you think?
I see a lot of hope, yeah. And nothing is more important than the resistance that I hear in this room and from this panel. Where I went from my local political situation of prostitution to connecting that issue internationally as a form of violence against women was briefly, it went like this. The further I get out from this, the simpler it is. There was a group of mostly men and their women handmaidens that had a task force, a political task force on prostitution. And there was a woman they were kicking off the task force who was a survivor of prostitution because, and this is a quote, she was too negative about prostitution and they wanted her to shut up. I met her. I knew nothing about prostitution. We got very, very angry, very angry. Never, ever underestimate women's fury about how badly sisters are being treated. So we decided to counteract the lies, the flood of lies about prostitution in San Francisco. And that meant we did something that anyone in this room can do. We very carefully went out and listened to women and listened to their descriptions of what prostitution was. And then from there, it grew. And she and I both went in 1995 to the International Women's Conference in Beijing. And that's where the understanding of what this really was came home to me. I don't know if any of you were there, but you know the way, you know those phone books we used to have before cell phones that were made of super thin paper? And at Beijing, the conference schedule with women from every country in the world, the conference schedule was about 1.5 inches thick, very, very thin, and every single workshop at that conference was about some form of violence against women, including prostitution. I go into shock thinking about that today, the pervasiveness of what we're up against. But the words of women and our ability to counteract the dismissal, the disappearance, the lies, that's, you know, when women get together and tell the truth and describe what is happening, it's a force to be reckoned with. But that was our goal in prostitution research and education, simply to tell the truth. And then it expanded, and we ended up doing research where we protected men in research studies and made it possible for them to be anonymous and hide, and we paid them to tell us the truth about prostitution. And amazingly enough, they said the same thing women did when they were safe enough to open their mouths. So, and many permutations of that. So that's how it went down.
Thank you. It's remarkable work, so if you can, please look up prostitution research and education. It's a great resource and an inspiration for open-coming researchers like me. So I wonder if we could go back to you, Maria, and you've told me that you're very concerned about the state of human rights for Inuit women, and I wonder if you could tell us about what is happening to Inuit women in Canada, and what can we do to sort of help?
Yes. So when we talk about Indigenous women in Canada, we talk about a very diverse group of women. We're not talking about a single culture, single language. We're talking about multiple languages. There are Inuit women, there are First Nation women, and there are Métis women. In Montreal, we have a big displacement of Inuit women coming from up north. All the way to the urban areas. So in Montreal, we have a community in downtown Montreal. Most Inuit women, when they come, they do not have a sense of community because they don't have connections. Maybe they know of someone that lives in Montreal but is struggling to make ends meet and survive, so they usually end up homeless. I was working at a women's shelter in an area called Cabot Square, where there's a park in the center. And most Inuit women will hang out there. They are very much targeted by pimps, and they are being recruited as soon as they land to Montreal. We have received at La Clé some calls from shelter workers at different shelters that work with Indigenous women and Inuit women, and that have been told that pimps have been roaming around the shelters and recruiting women there as well. Often when women try to leave to the shelters to try and seek safetyness, the pimps will go there and wait for them to get out. There are also shelter workers who are saying that they feel also fear because they have been harassed by them as well. Even though the police knows very well who the pimps are, they rather just wait until the woman she makes a statement, but often women are very afraid of dealing with the police just because of the history of police involvement in Indigenous women's lives. The population of Canada, of Indigenous people in Canada is 4%, but they are overrepresented in jail systems. They are overrepresented in poverty statistics. They are also overrepresented in murdered statistics. So they make up to 25%, of the murdered women percentages. So it's quite high. And what we know from speaking to Indigenous women and Inuit women is that they feel afraid of dealing with the police due to being already harassed in the streets. They get fined. I remember working with one woman who had $10,000 in debt with the police and feared to have to go back to the prisons because she already had that fine that she could not pay. So this is something that we are trying to work towards. For the next year, we are hoping to do some women's circles where we can actually discuss their own experiences and try to look for some solutions. We have also started doing some training with the shelter workers just to try and talk about how sexual exploitation affects Indigenous women in their communities.
You know, the depravity of PIMS knows no bounds, and I have many words to say, but we're not allowed to curse, so, you know. But that's remarkable work, and it's important work. And I wonder if we could go for 1 second to Marianne Hester. Professor Hester, my PhD supervisor. You have been the, I should know this. You are Professor Emerita at the University of Bristol. You're the former head of the Center for Gender and Violence Research, and you are an internationally recognized leading researcher on male violence against women. I wonder if you could go back into your mind and looking over your career, what has been your biggest challenge when trying to address and end male violence against women?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I mean, I've worked on, yeah, my partner says I'm always trying to document what we already know. So, but I think it's very important that we keep documenting what's going on. And one of the biggest challenge is that men are always finding new ways to be violent against women. You know, I don't like using the word a violent word, but the whacking, but really it's a whack-a-mole kind of approach. You know, we kind of bash them down in one side and then they pop up somewhere else. And we're forever having to figure out what they're up to next. So my research, in a way, has also, I've looked at all forms of violence against women. The one that's been actually most difficult, something I've worked on for many years, since the late 1980s, really, is the way men use children against women and abuse the children as well. So especially when women are trying to get away from violent men in relationships, and the men, trying to get contact, custody, so on, and we've at times won that battle. So I've been researching that and really pushing in the evidence about what's happening about that, and being very much part of trying to change that landscape. And we have at different times got the judges and parts of the government on board, and then we've changed the way that the courts work in that way. And then very quickly, the heavy elastic band of patriarchy kind of zooms back in again, and the men find ways to winning that one again. So I found, and then we have to we have to push again, and recently, of course, men are beginning to use the whole idea of alienation, parental alienation. Again, we got rid of it before. We even got the World Health Organization, we got World Health Organization and the listings of syndromes to say it's not a syndrome, it is not a real thing, but it's crept back in. So so I suppose my role as a researcher has been always to see what's kind of happening, documenting it really well, so that we've got the evidence to kind of take it up. But that one, emotionally, I've found it very, very difficult, because we haven't won that one, and we have to keep fighting. At the moment, actually, I mean, the other thing is data. We've talked about data at this conference, and the importance, for example, of absolutely making sure we record sex separately from gender identity. We also have to record sexual orientation, because we're losing lesbian markers as well. We have to have, so with the three, it's no good talking about sex, gender identity. We have to have sexual orientation as well. So I'm making a big plea for that, for any of you working on data. But data can be powerful, right? And one of the things I've been working on recently is the crime survey for England and Wales. Now, that is a very important survey. It runs all the time. It's the big survey of victimization that brings in, every different ways that people are victimized, burglary and all that, theft, etc., and different forms of violence. But it's also got within it violence against women. And I've just been leading a team rewriting the questions on domestic abuse with coercive control, and also, but ensuring we've got a big set of questions on the impact of what goes on. And also, it's very exciting, actually, because we've managed to get our Office for National Statistics to agree on a completely new way of calculating prevalence. Now, prevalence means if you've experienced something once, you tick a box. If you've experienced the same thing 100 times, you tick one box. And that's always been our problem as feminists. It makes it look like men experience nearly as much violence as we do, which is complete and utter bullshit, of course. We know it's, absolutely not true. So I've been working on a way to make much more sophisticated analysis that really will show up that difference that we really experience, more severe, etc., etc. And our Office for National Statistics have agreed they will try this new method where we will be looking at experience and impact, and we can see the difference between those of us as women experiencing lots of different violence, but also the real impacts on us. And then, the kind of the odd experience with not much impact. We'll be able to see that. So look out for the data coming through in November. It'll be the first time they publish on that, and I'm just hoping it's going to work. But if it does, that would be.
So I wonder if we could go now to Vandana. Vandana, because you work in caste discrimination, and when we learn about caste discrimination and the sex-based oppression that women are facing, we think about India. But the point that you make in your work is like, hey, there's a lot of really horrible things that are happening to women also in the UK. So can you tell us about the work that you do here in the UK around caste discrimination and the sex-based oppression of women?
Actually, in the UK, when I came here for the first time, I realized that caste discrimination, South Asians are carrying that baggage wherever they go in the world, and they don't talk about it. It's a hush-hush matter. It doesn't come out in the open. The way they oppress the women, the supremacists, the dominant caste is, they utter slurs, which are casteist slurs, and which, they are in the local language, so people do not understand it. I have heard these slurs when you go on the bus. If somebody knows that this person belongs to an untouchable caste, they say those slurs. And these are slurs which nobody should be knowing them, understanding them. They are very, very sexist. And the oppression, they cannot rape somebody here. That is the only thing which is not happening in this country. But otherwise in India, we have the rape. You know the Manipur case, which the women were paraded naked. very recently. They were belonging from a tribe. So the women from the lowest hierarchy, which is the scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, the untouchables, these are the women who are exposed to all these things. And this type of abuse goes on in the UK, but in a different way. And it's also on social media. And there was one case which happened just 4 months ago, where the person who had said something about a woman, about a Dalit woman, he was convicted. So that was the first, what we got was the a victory. But in the caste legislation, there was a legislation which we have fought for. We fought for on the streets. We had protests because the Equality Act, or the Equality Bill, which was going to be passed that time, now it is the Act. In that, everything is included. Racism, all, disability, everything is included, but caste was not included. If caste is existing in this country, why shouldn't we speak about it? And why shouldn't we have it in the Equality Act? That was our question. It has been included now, but it is not triggered because you know who's in the government, you know the Hindu lobby, how much they are working towards stopping it. We had a consultation. The consultation showed that there are caste-based discrimination. It happens in this country. But now, what happened that time was they took another consultation because there was a pressure lobby from the Hindu side. So I'm speaking very openly about the Hindus because they have a very good connection with the government and they have good business diplomacy with India. And we also have a fascist government in our country. So I'm not looking at anything positive coming out of this, though we have it in the equality law. But I'm hopeful that if we have a change of government, if we have better policies, if we implement these things, we are not alone, and we want you to be with us. I want you all to ask the South Asians, which caste do you belong? And they do belong to a caste, but so many years, they have come to this country, but they do not speak about these things. This is a hushed up matter. So I want all of you, it's a challenge to you, to ask all South Asians, any South Asian coming to you, what is your caste? And they will have a caste. They will say we don't follow it, but it is there. And I want to get it out on this stage to say that it is there, and I want to name it and shame it. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. We take the challenge on. Marie-Claire, can we go back to you for a second? And you mentioned that, so you're a women's rights campaigner from the Democratic Republic of Congo. You mentioned that you were concerned about the imposition of gender identity theories and policies in your country. I wonder if you can speak to us about what's happening on the ground and the effects that is happening in Congolese women, because I'm just going to steal 30 seconds from your answer to say, for example, I'm from the Dominican Republic, and women's rights, the state of women's rights is challenging because, for example, we have some of the most restrictive abortion laws in the world. Like, women are not allowed even to have an abortion to save their own lives when their health is in danger. So that is the context. And in that context, there are lobbies, international lobbies, who are trying to pressure us to install gender identity into our legislation, to the point that the Dominican government, the current Dominican government, has proposed that the Dominican government has proposed that people who descend from gender identity could face 30 years in prison for committing a hate crime. 30 years in prison. So that is the context. And I'm very interested in not only the impacts on little countries like mine, but like what's happening in countries like yours. Can you tell us about it?
We cannot, first of all, we can't dissociate what's happening at the international to the local. As a survivor, let me remind you that when I'm looking at the news, particularly what's happening between Israel and Palestine. I don't know if some of you have seen the image of this woman being taken out of the boot of the car with blood on her back. I cried. I'm a survivor of sexual violence. I'm a mother and a grandmother. When I saw the women in Palestine who were crying for their children who had died, I cried. And I was crying because I was thinking about my sister in Congo. Women have been buried alive in Mwenga for resisting oppression. And who are the perpetrators? Who are the warmongers? The warmongers are those who sit at the UN Security Council, NATO, this militarization alliance who is oppressing countries. Today, when you look at the head of state in Africa, they are all dictators. Most of them are dictators. I thought about our sister in Sudan. I thought about our sister in Ukraine. But in the news, do you hear about the infighting in Sudan? Do you hear about what is happening in Congo constantly? I was sad for the women in Israel and Palestine and Ukraine, but at the same time, I was angry and bitter because I said, what about us? Nobody's talking about our suffering. It's been ongoing in the Congo for years. What is this? There is an hypocrisy. And then they're telling us, I was just listening to what my sister from Afghanistan is saying, is relevant to us. We are fighting different battles. We have to fight impoverishedness. We have to fight masculinity, violent masculinity from our brother, we have to fight women who have compromised because of consumering capitalism. We have to fight patriarchy, institutional structure. Even the UN Women doesn't speak for us anymore because it has been compromised with this gender ideology. Yes. And today, I am here. I live in the UK and support my sister in the Congo. I have been called into question by those who are supporting gender ideology because I've been cancelled. Yes. Yes. Because last year, in 2021, I was invited by the Women Declaration. You know the Women Declaration fighting for this issue. I was invited. These are my sisters. Wherever they talk about women's rights, I'm there. And this gender ideology has come to divide us even further. We have more work, so this is a new battle for me, which I don't have time to, because I have to concentrate on my sister on the ground. Yes. So I imagine the Women Declaration giving me space to speak on the Congo, on the women, peace and security in the Congo. The video are online on YouTube, and they're inviting me to go to speak online. It was during the pandemic. The CSW, the Commission on the Status of Women at the UN was happening. They had a session, and an organization that I belong to called me, sent another organization to call me to ask me to remove my name from that panel. Can you imagine? If they can do it to me, who have a voice in English, how much they can do it to women back home? Can you imagine? And this, yes. And this is an organization that I'm going to name. This is with the Women International League for Peace and Freedom. That I have set up a section in Africa, because before I joined that movement, there was no section in Africa. Can you imagine what he did to me? To ask me, remove Will from your biography. And who was asking them? AWID, the Association of Women in Development. They sent me a message. And I'm naming them today because I'm not scared. So, this is what is happening. Yes. This is what is happening. Calling me names, saying that, as a scientist, you should know. I am a scientist, and I know the difference between biology and gender. I know the difference. so grateful. And this is what's happening. And I know my sister from Afghanistan has just talked about the Women Declaration. But some women, we need to support women regardless of the platform that we are going to talk. If today some organizations are willing to listen to our voices, why do we have to separate each other because of politics? Because this gender ideology are politics that favors men, not us. This is what's happening to other women on the ground. That means they're selecting now which platform she's talking, you are associating with. And also, gender ideology, there's a lot of confusion back home. Some people are mixing it with sexual orientation because they don't understand. Recently, we had our president coming to say that he doesn't even support gender. Online like that, and started to say, oh, we don't support sexual orientation. So he was actually confusing gender with sexual orientation. And so that when you talk, being a feminist, when we talk about oppression, they're looking at us and saying, oh, they're coming to perform, so you have more homophobia. We've always lived with transgender in Africa, in Congo. They've never been discriminated. No, we've always lived with them as human beings. But with this new trend, there is now a threat to their lives. So this is really the situation at stake. And what we are asking is solidarity. A solidarity that is based to our reality as women. Who's defining who's a woman? Is it the UN? Is it those who sit at the UN Security Council who are going to define who is a woman? Those who cannot even contextualize what means peace for us. Those who cannot even contextualize what means security for us. Because as we are contextualizing the women, peace and security agenda, we are sending a message to the UN Security Council. Peace is not what it means for them. Security, the arm, the militarism, that's not security for us. Security for us is for us to be free, to our country to be able to farm our land, to give food to our children. Okay? So this is security for us. Peace means for us is not only the absence of war, the absence of, it means to get access to our water, to have our land back. That's what it means for us. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. What important contributions all of these women are making. And before we end, I have to hear back from Sohier. Sohier, we need to talk about what's happening to women in Sudan. Can you tell us a little bit about the state of play of human rights for women and girls?
Thank you very much. As I was listening to you, and I'm listening to Marie-Claire, that is what many of you might not have realized is on April 15th this year, a war started in Sudan between two generals. And as we say in Africa, when two elephants fight, the grass gets trampled underneath, and we have all been severely trampled. It has meant a lot of people running out of the country, but the women and the girls in particular, huge degrees of, a huge amount of abuse. It's been something culturally that was not present up until about 20 years ago when the war in Darfur started. And then at that point, rape and abuse of women and girls became a common thing. But now it has reached the capital of Sudan, which is Khartoum. So as a group of doctors in the UK, we're part of a group called Sudan Doctors for Human Rights. And our job was to do multiple things because they stopped everything, medication, surgery, everything. We went down to only 16% of hospitals working in the entire country. Women who were dying due to the abuse were often not buried. They were left where they were trampled on and basically just left there. So there are pictures of bloated corpses, houses destroyed. So we were fighting the war of the generals and then the war of the generals on the people. And even if you went out to get water or food or whatever, you were a target at that point. We've worked with exactly what you were saying about negotiation. We have to negotiate. We've tried negotiating at all levels, government, different organizations, US, UK, EU, everywhere. It's an extremely difficult path. What shocks me about war every single time is the voices of the people in need are disregarded every single time. And then we get people in our group, as it were, the people who can do the talking, who are doing the talking for their own purpose. It's not necessarily for the good of the people or for the good of the land. So you're struggling inside the country, you're struggling outside the country, and getting rights of access and getting some form of healthcare. We have lost numerous doctors. It's very common in Africa, and I think in Sudan in particular, the intelligentsia are always targeted. So if you're a lawyer, if you're a doctor, if you're anybody with a brain, basically, as they are perceived to be, you are a target. So some of us who are here have been told to be cautious. We are known. We are also targeted in the UK. There are various things that happen to us which we don't talk about. We've been told to change our routes. We've been told not to do normal activities and told to stay safe. So it isn't just a problem in the country, it's the problem wherever you are, wherever you exist. And I'm listening to Marie-Claire and the passion in her voice, but also the anger in her voice, because the same things that are happening to the Congo and the same people doing the same things in the Congo are happening throughout Africa, and I suspect throughout the world. So I can't really follow the passion that Marie-Claire has, because she really roused us all to I felt like standing up and applauding you, because the most important thing is not to have fear. You mustn't be afraid, because the thing is that when you're in that room, the fear is usually on their side, not you. You need to just stand up and stand firm, because you're speaking truth, and all you're asking for is justice. Thank you.
So it looks like we're going to be finishing on the topic of peace. And I want to hear back. I don't want us to finish without hearing back from Salome. Salome, you work particularly with women fleeing conflict. What would you like to say about the work that you do, and also to our audience that is now really energized and excited to do what we can to end conflict?
Thank you. I think each and every one of us can help. And also it's important when we are talking about, our countries. I originally come from Kenya, and we are talking about all these countries where we are coming from. But we also have women who have come from those countries, living now here in Europe in particular. And they face a lot of challenges, and issues that actually face them are huge. We know with the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security for many countries, for example, in Ireland, where I come from, they have put a section on women coming from conflict under the relief and recovery, to support those women, because, they're affected by trauma of what has happened before they came from their countries of origin, and now when they come into Europe. I know, for example, in Ireland, we don't have support for trauma for many women. We only have actually one organization that deals with support for trauma, and many women don't even get that. So it's very important that we remember them. These are the women actually who have inspired me even to go back and research in, for example, Congo. So I just wanted to say that, we should not leave any woman behind, that all of us actually should be able to support these women. We see them, we live with them, even in here in Scotland, in wherever country we are living. We have women who have come from conflict zones, and they need our support. They are calling us to support them and to help them. So just to bear that in mind. Thank you.
I have to say that sharing this panel has been perhaps one of the greatest honors in my life. It has been so moving, and I'm so grateful to all of our speakers and to the audience for being here. So thank you, everyone, for such a great panel.
So we'll be ending up with the solidarity song that we started with. So, solidarity. with women of the world. So. Solidarity with women of the world. So.